Oh, hi, welcome to the new sharing office. Why don't we give you a tour? Come on. So this is where all of the staff work. So these are the staff desks. We've separated everything into our different scrums, but also based on the functions. So we've got the blockchain developers, front-end UX, UI, middleware developers. We've got the BAs, QA, and so on. Then over here is a little bit of a sort of a breakout relaxation area. Then we move over to this area here, which is sort of more of a bit of a breakout relaxation. Some of the staff like eating there, having snacks or lunch at their window. And then through here we've got the hot desking area. So this is where some of the staff from out of town or some that work from home come in to work from the office. And then over here we've got an open meeting room. So some of the video conferences and stuff that we do are done from here. Some of the staff also like to get together and play some of the PlayStation or Nintendo here as well. Then behind me we've got the kitchen area and the dining tables. This is our entrance. And then through here we've got our main boardroom, and it's got Jung, sorry for disturbing you. And then in here we've got one of our smaller meeting rooms. So I hope you've enjoyed the tour. Let's get started with the live stream. Well, I hope you enjoyed the sharing office tour. So now let's sit down and start talking about the sharing narrative. This is quite an in-depth subject, so let's dig in. After that, I'll do a few demos, and then we'll start talking about sharing roadmap and so on. So let's go. So over the last 4 years, I guess nobody would argue that we've built a lot of different technologies at ShareRing. We've built travel and accommodation, activities, COVID vaccine certificates, client dashboards, NFT space, access events, and so on. Some of these haven't seen the light of day, others weren't received as widely as we anticipated, but I guess amongst all of that there's been quite a lot of confusion around what our narrative is as a company, as ShareRing. So let's make sure we get everyone on the same page. At our core, ShareRing have developed a blockchain-based platform to facilitate the creation of self-sovereign verifiable credentials that can be used in almost an unlimited number of Web 2 and Web 3 scenarios. This helps to reduce friction when purchasing, renting or accessing goods and services, all whilst maintaining the highest level of trust and security between you and the company or person you're dealing with. So when we talk about the narrative, that's the core, that's the foundation of us, the foundation of verifiable credentials. Everything else is basically built beyond and above that. In terms of what our goals are as a company, one of the things that we need to do is really start aligning our goals with the goal of the community and the companies and all of the other stakeholders that we work with. And that goal is to maximize transactions on the blockchain. So how do we do this? So basically moving on from now onwards, what we've done is we've effectively split the functions within the company into two very distinct areas. The area one is really focusing on our layer one product, which is ShareLedger as a blockchain. And what we need to do to maximize transactions on that, in that area, is really around building out MVPs. So MVPs are minimum viable products. So they're quick, easy, small products and programs that will help demonstrate the capability of ShareLedger and demonstrate what we can do with verifiable credentials. Another area is around hackathons. So we'll start talking about that very, very soon in terms of a hackathon that we're launching soon. And that's really around bringing developers in, grassroots developers, about working with us to develop products and smart contracts on the blockchain. So with the introduction of Cosmosm, the smart contracts platform, that actually allows us to start doing that sort of thing. The other area would be around community partnerships, so bringing other communities in, particularly around the Cosmos community, to get them to start utilising and leveraging some of the technology that we've developed on ShareLedger, and even leveraging some of the smart contracts that are developed. So with the IBC, which is the interplanetary blockchain, that actually allows for cross-chain communication, and it means that if we market ourselves effectively as the blockchain for verifiable credentials within the Cosmos ecosystem, It means that you could have, say, a smart contract on one chain in the Cosmos ecosystem, leveraging some of the smart contracts for verifiable credentials on ShareLedger, or the NFTs, or the soulbound tokens, and so on. The other area is really around project incubation or product incubation, and that's where we work with groups or communities or businesses and help to fund and help to basically work on growing some technology that utilises what we've done. The other areas around partnering with some funds and running pitch fests and things like that. So as some of you know, I was involved in a few pitch fests and incubators with the likes of Techstars. So I was a mentor with them, and I mentored a number of companies through that program. So we'll leverage some of those types of things to basically build on ShareLedger and to help sort of grow that. And I'll go into a bit more detail about that shortly. The other area is really around B2B partnerships. Now, while we're not sort of going to pretend that we're experts in financial services or events or any other areas we go into, a business model around this is really around us working with or finding businesses that we can partner with that are experts in those areas. So for example, around financial services, what we'll be doing is partnering with financial services companies, credit unions, banks, crypto exchanges, and so on, where they work with us and they bring their expertise into building the products on top of ShareLedger that utilise verifiable credentials, soulbound tokens, or smart contracts, and so on. Same within events. So we partner with experts in the events industry that can work with us on creating products around event ticketing and things like that. So you'll see a lot more information about that soon. In terms of the layer 1 blockchain, as I mentioned before, the core goal of us to increasing transaction is really around how to allow people to create products and smart contracts that helps to create that frictionless access to goods and services. And there's obviously additional things that will create more transactions around staking, swapping, the governance module, transactions, the MVPs that we're building, and I'll show you a couple of those soon, and then also the hackathons. So what a lot of this means is that we need to start rethinking how we address fees or utilise fees on ShareLedger. So as some of the OGs would know, and also some people that have read the transaction fee module white paper, they would know that a lot of our fees, or all of our fees, are actually denoted in US dollars. And the way that basically works is we've got a module on ShareLedger called Gentlemint that is effectively an exchange module. And what would happen is if a transaction occurs, that transaction is priced in a US dollar value, so somewhere between 1 and 5 cents at the moment. And then that transaction, the Gentlemint module, effectively looks up the current USD price on a regular basis and effectively locks in the price of share token versus USD, and then charges the number of share token based on what that price is. So for example, if the price of share token is at the moment 0.25 cents, and there is a transaction with a 1 cent fee, as an example, which is a send share transaction, that would actually use 4 share token, and that 4 share token would get distributed amongst the masternode holders. Now, that is excellent for the business to business side, because what it means is that when we're working with businesses, we always have a predictable transaction pricing module. So on the business to business side, when they're not using smart contracts, we'll probably still be using that type of model in terms of the fee distribution. But on the other side, when we're talking about introducing smart contracts and doing hackathons and getting the community to build and maximising transactions and all that sort of stuff, we need to really rethink how we do that. And what we're doing is we're basically going to have a dual fee model. One fee which basically uses the ShareRing APIs, client libraries, and Gentlemint will be about very specific transactions that are built on top of, say, the ShareRing Vault and some of our foundational stuff, where we work with business to business opportunities, and all of that stuff will basically be done in US dollars. On the other side, with community builds, hackathons, and all that sort of stuff, we'll be using a gas model. Now, what we're looking at the moment is how we can sort of work with the fee distribution to maximise the incentives for people to build on the blockchain. So on this screen here, on the left-hand side, you can see that currently 100% of the fees basically go to masternode holders. What we're going to be doing is issuing a proposal soon where 50% of the fees go to masternode holders and then we put 50% into a development fund that is used to help build on top of Share Ledger, but also maximise the business-to-business opportunities, which will in turn maximise transactions. So there's an incentive within that fund to basically look at maximising transactions. On the other side, and this is really a draft spec that we're putting together, what we're looking at doing is, as you know, sort of on a number of other blockchains, the only incentive sometimes for developers to build smart contracts in terms of financial incentive for them is if they create their own token and then they have a utility token and all that sort of stuff. What we want to do is start rewarding developers of smart contracts directly through the utilization of those smart contracts. So effectively, when a gas fee is charged for the usage of, say, a DeFi smart contract, the developer would actually benefit from the usage of that contract directly. And it means that we can build in this incentive program for people, for not just the developers to build the contracts, but for the developers to also get people to use those contracts. And then we're going to have a function around what we call master builders, which is effectively the top X number of developers would share in the overall number of transactions on the blockchain. And so they would actually earn fees for that there. And then an amount for the development fund. So that development fund will go towards prizes for hackathons, it would go towards incubation, it would go towards funding new projects and so on and so on. And then the 50% is distributed to the masternode holders, of which ShareRing owns a number of those as well. So we'll be putting this package together and then putting it through our governance module over the next few weeks to propose that as a new fee module. For now though, what we've got in place for Cosmosm is effectively just a standard gas fee module that uses the standard gas fee pricing as part of Cosmos ecosystem. And then on the other side for the ShareRing API, that still stays as it is now in terms of transactions go towards the users. So I hope a lot of that explanation around really the foundational side of Share Ledger sort of goes to explain how we're realigning ourselves really around focusing on maximising the number of transactions. So we've got some forecasts that we've been putting in place in terms of where we are hoping to be in terms of transaction numbers, and the numbers are really focused around how do we make sure we allow the masternode holders to really benefit from being masternode holders. And then how do we make sure that the people that are staking tokens also benefit through a good sort of maintainable, sustainable APY that they basically get on whatever they stake. So moving on to the B2B side, as I explained, the business-to-business side is effectively focused on partnering with organisations that will work with us to build their products and technology on top of Share Ledger within their sort of the industry that they're the expert in. So the first two areas that we're focusing on now, and we're working very aggressively, and we've been doing this for quite some time, so we're already in some very, very advanced discussions with a number of companies in these areas, is around financial services. The two main areas there are really around eKYC, so utilising the verifiable credentials, but also using smart contracts and soulbound tokens to allow people to verify who they are when signing up for, say, a credit union, a crypto exchange, and so on. Part of the goal around this is to minimise the activities of, say, rechecking the information of a user, to allow for, let's say, credit union A has verified a user and done a physical verification of someone's passport, and what they would do is effectively create something like a soulbound token that says, yes, we've already checked this person's details, so that when they go to credit union B and submit their information through the ShareRing Vault, the credit union B will automatically just accept them because they trust the credit union A has gone through the process. So we're working with a number of institutions at the moment to instigate that. So we're really excited about that area there because we think it's quite groundbreaking in terms of how it's removing friction to allow people to sign up, but also increasing that level of trust as well. The other area that we're pushing very hard into is really around what we call sharing event services, and that's around utilising verifiable credentials and NFTs to give you access to events. So one really cool thing that we've basically just done is we've actually managed to get the ShareRing Events platform to issue QR codes based on your identity and also having an NFT-based event ticket, but those QR codes can be used on legacy ticket machines. But basically what you can do is effectively take your app, it can be in airplane mode, it doesn't really matter. You can take the ShareRing Events app, And if you've got the NFT either through an externally connected wallet, so you don't need to put it into the ShareLedger wallet, or on ShareLedger, or however you've basically brought it into the app, and you meet certain criteria, maybe an age criteria, identity criteria, whatever, then a QR code will be generated. And when you go into the event, you simply scan the QR code on the ticketing machine, and then in you go. Very, very seamless, very fast, no bottlenecks. What we've seen on a number of other sort of platforms that are looking at NFT events is they've got bottlenecks in terms of how you sign the transaction, how you enter it, custom Android apps to scan the QR codes, and so on. So we're really happy that we can sort of start leveraging existing infrastructure to do that. And you'll hear a lot more over the next few weeks and months over what we're doing around sharing event services. Okay, so next up I want to talk about accommodation. So a lot of people have been asking, when are we launching hotel bookings, when can I start booking hotels, when's accommodation coming out, and so on and so on. And I did promise that I would be addressing this soon, so let's address it now. So basically we've decided to indefinitely shelve accommodation. That doesn't mean it's not finished. It is actually a finished product. It's ready to go. We can turn it on at any time. But there's a number of reasons why we've decided to shelve it. Number one, it's not the right timing. So if we launched it when it was first ready through COVID, it would not make sense at all. We'd be launching it to 0 bookings. And the negative feedback we'd have on it would be very, very high because there's no bookings. The other reason why is when we first started developing it, it was very heavily dependent on the e-visa on arrival scheme in Thailand, where we had an MOU with a company based in Thailand who was processing the EVOA. So we had some very, very large numbers that were forecast as part of that captive audience, and we were going to be offering hotel accommodations through that because we had that big captive audience. So obviously, due to COVID-19, the whole EVOA program was dismantled, and there's no forecast of when it will be recreated and even in what form it'll take. So obviously Thailand's opened their borders again, but the whole EVOA program and the company we're working with back then, none of that stuff exists now as it did back then. We do have a very strong relationship and an agreement with Rakuten Travel Exchange, and that will continue. So we'll be working with them to decide when the right time, if any, to launch accommodation is in the future. The other thing, and this is really going back to our narrative, it doesn't significantly impact transactions. We're not expecting to see, if we launch travel, a very large number of transactions. If anything, when we hit critical mass, we'll probably only see another 20 to 30,000 transactions per month from accommodation. And that's because there's one transaction when someone signs up for the ShareRing account. There's a few transactions when people make the booking, when people transfer, when people use ShareRing Pay, and so on and so on. And that's it. And if you're looking at sort of forecasting, you can compare it to some of the other startups in this space that are doing blockchain-based travel, and you can look at the number of bookings that they're getting per month. Translate that to maybe 4 or 5 transactions per booking, you're not getting big numbers. So if we're going to be pushing towards larger transaction numbers, it doesn't make sense for us to look at accommodation as a distraction. What we're expecting is that we're going to hit a critical mass very quickly in the other areas as opposed to accommodation. But as I said, it is a finished product. It's a product that works now, that we could switch on at any time. If it makes sense to switch on in the future, that's exactly what we'll do. But just for now, it's not switched on. So what I do want to do is basically show you a quick demo of accommodation in action, just to show you that it is actually working. So if you give me 1 sec, I'll just bring up my phone and show you here. So this is the front page of the ShareRing app that you all know well. Along the top here, if I scroll over, you can see a number of other functions that you'll often see grayed out. If I tap on accommodation here, it goes in, asks me for my destination. Now this is currently using Rakuten Travel Exchange's test data, so they've only got a small number of hotels available in that. But if we were to turn it on and move it to production, you'd see all the hotels. Go destination, so I'm just going to choose Tokyo, Japan as the destination. I can choose a date range, so I'll go over and choose a few days here. I go search, Then it's going to go off and search the API to see what hotels are available. Those ones there. I can then go in and I can do things like filter based on star rating, based on price, facilities, and so on. So there's a lot of options around there. Go out of that. I can also view the hotels on a map. So if I click map view and then sort of scroll the map, it'll show and jump to each of those hotel locations. Go back to list view, select a hotel. There's no photos, and the only reason there's no photos of the rooms is once again it's on a test server. You can see there this is a test property. You can see the room details, each of the different rooms that are available. I can even go down the right here and choose a different currency if I want to pay in that currency. So that's part of the SharePay functionality is dynamic exchange rates. I go in here, I go reserve, gives me all the details, star rating, and I can enter my payment detail, or I can choose to pay with SharePay as part of a stored value. And then when I click book now, it would book it. So one of the big benefits of there is it's using verifiable credentials, which means that I'm not having to enter any of my details in there at all. It just goes straight through. But once again, as I said, this is something that we are shelving for now. And in the future, if it does make sense through either an alliance or a partner or one of our programs to launch it, we will absolutely launch it. It's there, it's waiting. It's just waiting for the right time. So let's start talking about MVPs. I've got a bunch of things to show you. So as I mentioned earlier, part of demonstrating what we've done with the blockchain, helping people use it, getting downloads of the app, increasing transactions and so on, we've been doing a lot of work on MVPs. So I'm really excited to be showing you some of these today. Some of these are pre-alpha, some of them are alpha. There's a couple that we're going to be releasing very, very soon. A couple of the others we may release as an alpha, just to sort of start getting feedback and see what people think of it. But anyway, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to show you is something that we call identity query language. Now, I guess the best way to explain this is with verifiable credentials and the ShareRing Vault and everything we do with that, a lot of the work that we've been doing in the B2B area has been around creating some very, very linear solutions for what you would use your verifiable credentials for. So for example, in the financial services area, you would use your verifiable credentials for eKYC, and the workflow of that is reasonably linear. Obviously there's some customization and changes and all that available. In the event space, it's very similar. We take a verifiable credential, we take an NFT ticket, we connect them together, we generate a QR code, someone accesses events. So even though there's nuances involved with this, it's still a very linear process. What we've tried to do with identity query language is blow that open entirely and put the power into the community, the builders, the developers, the companies in terms of how they use the information that is part of verifiable credentials. And this works in both a Web 2 and a Web 3 arena. And effectively what it is identity query language comes from the premise of me trying to prove something about myself to somebody, an organization or a person or something like that. So the query language is about creating a query that asks me a question, and I use my verifiable credentials to answer that question either in a zero knowledge proof type of way, which is basically saying to someone, are you over 18? Yes or no. And what I mean by zero knowledge proof is there's trust in the fact that that person has answered yes, without having to give you all of the information such as their date of birth, their passport, driver's license number, all of that information. They've simply answered yes, I'm over 18. Or it may be a bigger query such as what is your passport number, or what is your home address, or what is your country, or what is your first and last name, and so on. So that could be used by, say, a website for creating an account. It could be used at, say, a 7-Eleven bricks and mortar style store to prove that you're over 18 so that you can buy some alcohol, or over 21, depending on the country. You could have a metaverse, for example, where you sign a transaction and within that transaction it proves that you are, maybe it's a metaverse for kids, so it proves that you're under 18, or maybe there's one for adults for above 18. So effectively you prove anything about yourself. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is actually show you identity query language at work. Here we go. So what you see on the screen right about now, so basically what you see on the screen now is the dashboard. Anyone that has access to identity query language gets their own dashboard, it's their own sandbox that they work within, and the dashboard serves two, maybe three main functions. One function is to create the queries, which you can see on the screen, and another function is effectively to see the results of queries. So you can have some of those results, and that information is encrypted with your public key. So the person that creates the query, all of the information, the only way to access that is to sign a transaction to get access that data and access the queries. So effectively what you would do through the query language is create a query and then generate either a static QR code that you can print out and put somewhere, or you could create a dynamic QR code which effectively you would have displaying on a screen, whether it's a phone, an Android tablet, a smart device, or something like that. The person scans that QR code and then the results of the scan would be presented on the screen, the results of the query. So what does this look like? So if I go into the query itself, let's go into another one. You've got a name, a title, you can have an API endpoint as well. So if I'm using a static or a dynamic QR that I scan, the information can go directly to your API, for example. Then you've got a color, which I'll explain in a sec, and then the query itself. So the query structure for us is basically just JavaScript. So it's a very simple JavaScript. You would request information such as, in this case, the person's age. In this query itself, it's saying if your age is above 18 and you can stack queries, so you can have multiple queries. And the country is America, then return yes. So this is a type of zero knowledge proof one where you're only asking a yes or no answer if this person is over 18 and from America, for example, or answer no. So let's actually see one of those in action. So if I click the eyeball on this one, are you over 18 and from Australia, what it's going to do is present a QR code. So this is a static one, and I'm going to move to a dynamic QR code. And I'm just going to open the app up. And basically in the app, all I need to do, very simple, is top right, open the QR scanner, and then scan that QR code. On the screen, it's asking me for my fingerprint, so I need to biometrically acknowledge who I am and acknowledge the query. And when I do that, what it does is it unlocks the vault. So it only uses my information to unlock the vault so that it can then send that information to the receiver. So you can see on my phone, it's giving me the result of the query, and then on the screen, it's giving the result of the query as well. So let's look at another one where we expect the answer to be a no. Are you over 18 and from America? So let's go to this one. Let it refresh. Change the dynamic one. Scan the QR code. There we go. No, I'm not from America. Let's go to another one that basically shows a query of where are you from. So this is more sort of informational, so a bit more information involved in there instead of just a yes or no answer. So I change the dynamic again. Go QR scanner, scan that QR code, do my biometrics, and it's responded saying I'm from Australia. And it's got that information directly from my vault. Now, the idea behind this for us is we're going to open this up to the world, let anyone create their own queries, and effectively look at how the ecosystem evolves around this. So this is all around creating a flexible platform that utilizes verifiable credentials. So these verifiable credentials the trust involved with that is really based around the vault and the digital fingerprint or the hash that's done on those documents that's stored on the blockchain. So we check that to make sure that the data isn't faked when we're presenting that information, so whether you're from Australia or if you're over 18 or something like that, which creates that both frictionless access and then also trust. So we are really excited to basically see what comes out of this. Moving on now, outside of identity query language, what I want to basically show you is something that we call web login. Now, for us, we have basically see the power of using, say, blockchain and signed transactions, verifiable credentials, as a mechanism to effectively get rid of the password. And whilst it's not going to happen overnight, it's something that we can definitely aspire to. There are platforms such as the Google and Facebook and things like that that allow you to do things like Google login, Facebook login, and they go a very long way to helping to remove the passwords from a number of websites. But obviously the downside of that is your life's information is stored on their central servers. So Facebook has all of your information about every site that you access, every site you log into. Google's the same. So we believe that we can do better than that. What we want to do is basically use the information in the ShareRing Vault, so verifiable credentials within there, to provide you the ability to log into any website without needing to remember your password and having your password stored in your vault. And then other examples, having no password at all. So I'm going to show you the first example of this with no password at all. And it's something that we've embedded into the identity query language. Now, you can see on the screen, it says sign in on my desktop screen, and that is effectively used or created through a very small amount of JavaScript code that allows you to sign in using your ShareRing app. So it works in a very similar way to, say, Google login or Facebook login or something like that. So all you would need to do is add this little bit of JavaScript code to allow you to sign in. So all I need to do is open my QR scanner, scan that QR code, do my fingerprint, so it needs biometrics to be able to sign in. And it will then, in turn, log me straight into that website without me needing to do anything. So let's do that again. So I'll log out. And I'll show you from my phone this time. And basically all I need to do on the app itself is go to the QR scanner at the top right, scan the QR code, use my fingerprint, and it signs me straight into that website. Simple as that. So if anyone else basically went in here, scanned it with the right version of the app, it would log into their own dashboard. So it's obviously logging into my own profile here, which is the dashboard. The next thing I'm going to show you is a really cool little Chrome plugin that we've created. And this Chrome plugin allows us to sign into any website that uses an email address and a username and password to log in. So what I'm going to do is show you this as an example on our admin dashboard. So this is basically our production admin dashboard that we use. At the top right, you can see a little ShareRing logo on my Chrome browser. If I click that, it's basically, you can't do anything with it. It just says QR password or autocomplete. But in the app itself, if I scroll to the right, you've got passwords, and these are some username and passwords that are stored within the ShareRing Vault. So very similar to, say, 1Password or LastPass or something like that, except the benefit here is that your passwords are stored in your vault on your phone, which means it's not stored on ShareRing servers, so there's no ability for anyone to hack or steal that information. It's encrypted with your public key on the blockchain, which means you only can unlock it with your private key or your biometrics. And it's completely portable, which means that you can use your passports to sign on to a web kiosk, internet cafe, you're using a friend's computer, you're using a shared work computer, you've lost your computer and you need to get onto a new computer. So it's completely portable and you don't need to remember any passwords. So the way that this works, if you go back to my desktop, is I simply click on this QR code, which has automatically been created, and then I just go to the QR scanner on the app, and then do that, fingerprint to getting the vault, and then you can see, bam, it's immediately put the login and the password in there where I can then log in to that website. Simple as that. And that works on any username and password or email and password supported website. So once again, part of the process with actually generating this and creating this is it uses your private key for the blockchain, but also it will sign the transaction to allow you to get into that website. So it'll basically use a signed transaction to allow you to get onto the website. It doesn't cost anything in terms of transaction fees. Signed transactions don't incur any transaction fees, but it very much uses the ShareLedger signed transactions for doing that. That's something that it's still in alpha now, so very early alpha, and something we're going to be releasing hopefully pretty soon. Okay, so I feel like this next section requires a little bit of a drum roll, and that's because we're going to be talking about roadmap. I would say that roadmap is probably the most requested thing from our community over the last 4 years. Where's your roadmap? What's next? What's next? What's next? And there's a number of reasons why we haven't presented that, which I won't go into. But as part of our new narrative, I feel it's very, very important that we actually do present a medium-term to long-term roadmap to you, just so you can see what we are developing, and you can sort of see the velocity of what we're actually putting out there and how it aligns to increasing transactions on the blockchain. So let's go. Here's a broad view of our roadmap, and our roadmap's basically broken up into 4 areas. One is foundational, which is the underlying technology that supports what we're doing. So things like foundational things within the app, so our face match enhancements, the NFC stuff that was added, and those things. The next one is around blockchain services. So these are upgrades and updates to ShareLedger itself, smart contracts, things that we build on the blockchain. We've also got digital lifestyle services. So these are more sort of focused around things like NFT spaces, the NFT related stuff, the small events and things like that. And then enterprise services, which is broader sort of business to business type of things. So I'll dive into each of those one by one. In terms of foundational, you can see on this roadmap, the ones in green, these are items that we have completed over the last couple of quarters. Things like the NFC and face match enhancement. So NFC, allowing you to onboard into the ShareRing app and verify your credentials just by using the NFC chip on your passport. So hold the passport to your phone and it'll read the information, create your vault and put that information in your vault. Face match enhancements, we made some huge leaps and bounds in terms of how we do the face match. So different skin tones and things like that are supported a lot better, whereas before we were getting a big failure rate in that area there. Different lighting, different effects and that sort of stuff. So we've made that a lot better with a very, very high success rate now. We've obviously done the swapping enhancements, the ability to swap from Binance Chain to ShareLedger now, the enhancements in terms of using the smart contract on ShareLedger to simplify the swapping process and reduce the fees substantially. Skinny ID is something that's finished but not released yet. So that's something that we have internal, which will allow you to sign up for the ShareRing app without having to do any identity. So what it will do is it will create your ShareRing ID, an account, but it won't create any documents within your vault because you just sign up with what's called a skinny ID. You'll have access to all of the services within ShareRing, except for ones that require your ID to process things like eKYC, events that require your documents for identification and things like that. We've also done a major change to the Vault user experience. So that change is going live very soon and includes things like putting the Vault front and center within the app, making it obvious of what the Vault actually is, adding different filters, different categories, the ability for you to sort of have, say, documents across multiple filters and things like that. So a lot more customization, and it's really built around the ability to scale it a lot more effectively as well from what it is now. There's also a small revamp of the mobile app that we're doing, which you'll see soon. and then SDKs. So what we're working on at the moment is the Vault as an SDK, the event system as an SDK, and various parts of the app as SDK. So for those of you that don't know, SDK stands for Software Development Kit. So it's effectively like a portion of the app that you can take and put into your own app. So for people that want to develop technology or apps that utilize the ShareRing Vault, they'll be able to take that SDK and build a ShareRing Vault around that. Next up is around the blockchain services. So Cosmos and smart contracts was activated on time as planned. So that's in, which is why it's green. The next thing we're launching, which we've got ready, we're just doing some small things to, is the testnet. So that will provide people that are developing smart contracts to basically test those smart contracts on our testnet first. There's a faucet that we've got that will give you the ability to mint some share token and use that on the testnet as well. So that's going to be launched very soon, as well as a lot of documentation that will help you with developing your own smart contracts. We also have the identity query language, which I just demonstrated before. Another area which is soulbound tokens, and then also our first hackathon, which is in the middle of planning now. So the plan at the moment for hackathon number 1 is to get all of the documentation and everything in place before the end of the year, and then we'll work with marketing and operations in actually scheduling when that hackathon is, but it's going to be happening very, very soon. Next up is around the business-to-business side of things for digital lifestyle services. So as I mentioned, NFT Spaces and NFT Events is out, that's released, that's a product that's done. The next phase for us is actually moving the NFT creation and distribution onto ShareLedger. So using Cosmos and smart contracts and using the NFT smart contract for ERC 721 and 1155 is to actually start minting those NFTs on ShareLedger. The benefit of doing that is very, very low fees, very, very fast interaction, but also it allows us to do some things that we otherwise couldn't do in terms of setting some rules around how those NFT tickets are used, and then also linking them with things like soulbound tokens. There's all sorts of cool things we're going to do around that. After that, we've got a product called Share Protect, which is a minimum viable product that we're working on. That got pushed back a little bit due to some other important business-to-business stuff that we're doing, and then also ongoing validation of some of the business-to-consumer and business-to-business ideas around that. That goes out through to next year. In the enterprise services B2B, which is more focused around financial services and things like that, we've got eKYC enhancements that are being finalised as part of the current sprint. The other part is we're basically reworking the baseline eKYC product for verifiable credentials. So that's basically going through, and that's going to be issued by the verifiable credentials that are issued by financial institutions. So the smart contracts and all of the things and bits and pieces that happen around that, which then flows onto a standalone financial services app by ShareRing. On the other area, we've got the standalone events app. So what we've decided to do, and this is based on demand from, or based on requests from a number of the companies that we're working with, is actually spin out the events app as a separate app. So there's a number of benefits around that. Obviously, you remove some of the confusion with people going to an event and seeing things like staking and swapping and all these other functions in there, wondering what they're about. And it means that we've got a dedicated app that we can also work with some companies on white labeling and things like that for the events. One of the really unique things that we're doing as part of this, though, is when we have separate apps, say the events app and the financial services app and the foundational sharing app and all of those, they don't create a new ShareRing Vault file within the phone. They all use the same ShareRing Vault, which means that once you've created your documentation and your account and all of that sort of stuff in one of the apps, when you install any of the other apps, they automatically have access to that vault, and you don't need to create a new account, and you don't need to go through that process again. It's all very, very seamless in terms of that process to get onboarded. So this roadmap we're going to be presenting on our blog and website really soon. But I hope that you like what we've got coming out in the near future, and it is something that we will keep updating. So it is something that each quarter we'll go back and review what we've achieved, and then we'll present an updated roadmap. And the more that we do this, the more sort of long range that roadmap will become. And there's some other sort of deeper things around ShareLedger that we're working on in terms of minor upgrades and that sort of stuff that we'll start presenting as well. And some of those will be in line with, say, interplanetary blockchain. Some of them will be in line with the Cosmos upgrades that are scheduled as well. So we'll start presenting some of those on the roadmap for you as well. So in terms of some announcements, I mean, I guess there's been quite a lot of announcements throughout this whole process anyway, through the roadmap, through the identity query language, through the logging with ShareRing, Solvan tokens, the announcement around accommodation, but some other announcements that we've got to make first. So number one, we are running our first hackathon soon. The marketing team will start rolling out some details about that hackathon and presenting sort of some dates, process times, who's invited, who can attend, how to attend, and so on and so on. Priority right now is to basically get all of the documentation ready. There's no point running a hackathon if people turn up and they don't know how to interact or interface with what you've developed, because otherwise it just becomes people talking and presenting ideas instead of actually developing on the blockchain. The focus for the hackathon, we do know, will be really around verifiable credentials and ShareLedger. So developing smart contracts on ShareLedger that will leverage verifiable credentials. So start thinking of some ideas around that. We're also doing a big giveaway, as I mentioned. So to participate, all you need to do is go to our Twitter. It's a new giveaway that we're doing. So we're giving 5 packs of $10 worth of staked share token. So that token will be staked and earning. We also are giving 5 ShareRing branded merch packs away, so caps, whatever, is going to be given away. So marketing's putting some really cool stuff together around that. And then we're also going to be giving some 5 C-phrase steel cards so that you can securely store your C-phrases away. So follow up on that, and we will be giving them away very, very soon. So I know there's been a lot covered. This has probably been the longest live stream we've done since we started the company. We have had others where we've made some great announcements and things like that, but in terms of the progress that we've made over the last 12 months and the progress that we are making and are going to make over the next 12 months, this has been groundbreaking in the last quarter. And we're really, really looking forward to activating a lot of this and starting to generate a lot of transactions on ShareLedger. So thank you very much, and I'll be in touch in the next 3 months for the next live stream. Thank you.